Hi there folks, welcome back to Rich Reviews. It's the end of 2021 and let me state that I saw a whole lot of films this year, some of which I reviewed, others I didn't review because I'm consciously aware that sometimes if I review something it may not get views on my channel, and sometimes I swing for the fence in hopes to get views. So my first honorable mention here is The Real Charlie Chaplin, a documentary, a 2-hour documentary to be precise, in which the highlight of this documentary shows you a lot of never before behind the scenes footage of Charlie Chaplin's movie making skills. And I think, quite frankly, anybody would be interested, including one very rarely seen interview with wife number 2. The second honorable mention here is Boss Level. Let me just state that I think whenever someone asks me, okay, what's a very good video game adaptation? Or when I hear people state that, oh yeah, there are no good video game adaptations, I like to point to Boss Level. It may not actually be a real video game adaptation, but it's certainly nonetheless a good film that aspires to be a video game. My third honorable mention here is The Long Halloween Part 1 and Part 2. I collectively put them together. And let me just state that I actually think that, let's face it, when it comes to DC animated films, they run the gamut sometimes, but I think collectively as a whole, this thing really does its job. It makes you actually want to go out and buy this graphic novel. So my number 10 here happens to be, yes, my number 10 here is Spiderman No Way Home. Originally, I was not going to put this on my top 10 because I quite frankly think it's very hard for, in my particular opinion, a superhero film to make my top 10 list, because it has to go above and beyond the Call of Duty. Considering that this year has been full of unpleasantness in this country, Spider-Man No Way Home just unified the country, more money than anything else this year. And let's face it, the theaters are somewhat back, and that's why I'm putting it on this list. This thing just enthralled me from beginning to end, even though there are no surprises in this thing whatsoever. And I think to myself, I'm basically done as a Marvel person, although I will see whatever Marvel throws my way. My number 9 on this list here happens to be, yes, my number 9 is The Suicide Squad. And I actually found myself thinking, do I want to switch my number 10 and number 9 here? Well, Suicide Squad goes on my number 9. Now, when I personally envision what the Suicide Squad should be, I think of James Gunn's version of the Suicide Squad. I don't think of David Ayer was doing with Suicide Squad was appropriate at all, because I don't think you have a whole bunch of goofy super villains coming together to fight an uber villain. And I'm sorry, Enchantress doesn't do it for me. Basically, it's giant Pokemon Starmie does it for me. For me, it's just a pure humorous amazement wonder here, folks, because maybe I'm just sick and tired of all the brooding melodrama that's been going on for the past year or so. My number 8 on this list here happens to be, this is a recent addition to the top 10 list. This is The Novice, and if you haven't seen this film, it's basically from IFC, where they make a whole bunch of dark horse films that hopefully sometimes comes out of the woodwork to surprise you all. And this is a story of a girl who basically goes and beyond the Call of Duty to achieve the best in her sport. If this thing were a guy, he'd be basically hailed as a hero for accomplishing something, despite the fact that, yes, no matter what stands in his way, for a girl, it's basically like she's crazy. That's all that you need to know, and all the fact that, hey look, rowing is a hard sport, whether it be a team sport or by yourself. Practicing is always good. My number 7 here on this list, yes, my number 7 here happens to be Mask. This is one of the most quiet films of the year. All this film consists of is two couples talking about the events that led them to having this conversation. I think a lot of people, if they had an idea in their head, could I sit down with the people that killed my son in a mass shooting? Could I be as compassionate as this couple is? And granted, we live in a world that, yes, is ugly, divisive. Guns are always going to be on the street. We always going to have gun violence. Mass shootings are never going to help. This film, I don't think will always rectify, but it always makes you wonder if people can have a conversation. My number 6 here happens to be, yes, my number 6 is Licorice Pizza. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson has done probably the most interesting thing in his memorable career, make an uplifting film, considering that a lot of his films are not necessarily uplifting. A lot of people on Twitter, and granted, this is the problem with Twitter. Twitter is not real people. Go out of this film just basically in love with this film and not think about the fact that, oh yeah, there's an age difference there. Because let's face it, if the genders were reversed, you'd all be speed screaming bloody murder. I would love to live this particular time period because coming of age stories often do it for me, and that's why I just seem to care. Number 5 on this list here is... My number 5 on this list happens to be The Last Duel. I know that House of Gucci made more money, but this was a more superior film. And I think, apparently, from what I understand, that Ridley Scott is going to do Napoleon next, so therefore that is a really royally screwed up family right there. But The Last Duel does something I think really does well, a Rashomon type like tale. Matt Damon sort of play 3 different aspects of one particular character. And also I think this film does one thing that I think most medieval films don't really show you. That chivalry was really nothing much to be crowed about, because let's face it, sexism was running rampant, rape was running rampant, life expectancy was, if you lived past childbirth, you could live a long time, or if you're a woman, if you didn't die in childbirth. Yes, scholars today are still constantly asking ourselves, did the event in question actually happen? Congrats to the lawyers, because quite frankly, you all need to do something. My number 4 on this list here happens to be... Yes, my number 4 on this list happens to be Belfast. This is a film that I did not review because I don't think I could have gotten the views for it. I found it was just a charming film, and I guess Jamie Dornan was actually born during that particular time period, so was Kenneth Branagh. Place and time in which a child-eye view of what things could easily be cannot always be construed. Now let's face it, I think we've come a long way. Trust me here, folks, Ireland has come a long way. Obviously, quite frankly, Brexit has just kind of thrown that thing into the brink for a little bit, but this is probably one of those films where I would love to visit Belfast. My number 3 on this list happens to be... My number 3 is No Time to Die. I think of all the James Bond actors, I come to believe when it comes to James Bond that Daniel Craig, his James Bond will go down in history as probably one of the more celebrated Bonds since Connery. And I come to believe that his Bond, well, let's just face it, has the least amount of rot since Connery's. But with Craig, it really feels like there's a real follow-through arc. I mean, yes, Quantum of Solace, wah, wah, wah. And I think, quite frankly, are we all ready to embrace the multiverse that is James Bond? Well, quite frankly, I think everyone should. My number 2 on this list here happens to be The Harder They Fall. And I know there are people out there who are thinking to themselves, when can we go see a fun Western? Well, this is in the mold of Tarantino, and it's a fun Western. This is personally the film that, say, Django should have been. And let's face it, I would love to meet some of these historical people, because I think, quite frankly, these people would have been able to tell fascinating stories if you actually met them. And let's face it, I'd like to meet Zazie Beetz in real life. I'm sorry there, folks. I want to date Zazie Beetz and just... a guy can dream. I'm just saying. And also the fact that the music is just spot on with this particular film. My number 1, and this is my best film of the year. Yes, my number 1 here is Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, and Rage. When it comes to documentaries that make my top 10 list, let me just say that there has to be a documentary about a certain subject that I have to be wowed by, and I did not know about a subject, and this is one of those subjects. It's one YouTuber that I know remembers Woodstock 99, and obviously I did not go to Woodstock. This was the end of TRL, it was the end of MTV, it was the end of the 90s, or the people that attended that event. You can either look at one of 2 ways. One, those are the people that invaded the Capitol on January 6th, or there are dads that look back on that with either one of 2 mindsets. Hooray, what a glass of beer will do, or they would look on horror to know that they were violent pigs. So folks, that's my top 10 of the year. I'll be back next year with new films, new TV shows, new documentaries, and, hooray. So folks, my top 10 films of the year, what did you think about them? Please say everything in the comment box below here, folks. As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, enrich yourself with knowledge. I'm Michael Rich Hughes 2 on Twitter. I'll see you next time, folks. Yes, sir.